Lisette and Nynke, welcome. Very nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Lisette, you are just recently defended your PhD thesis on the topic of attentive involvement in the classroom. Congratulations,
Thank you.
first and foremost. It was a beautiful ceremony. And why do a PhD and why specifically on this topic?
Well, I think we often talk about truly having an encounter, but we don't really know what we mean by it. So when we're in the classroom, it's very important to have a true encounter with your pupil. If else he doesn't learn anything, you have to get in contact somehow. And I wanted to figure out what that is about and what does or does not happen in that encounter, and especially when it is or is not an educational encounter, because the purpose of education is to bring young people in the world, you could say.
So it's really about these encounters, of course, happen all the time in our society, but you say there's a special quality that needs to be in an encounter in order to convey a message in an educational sense.
Yes, I say I define it as being attentively engaged. And what does it need to be attentively engaged? What does it ask from the teacher? And which environmental things should be there in order to be able to have an encounter?
Interesting. I think we even have the PhD thesis here. It's a beautiful book. I think for the Dutch viewers here, it's also available in all bookstores in the Netherlands?
Yes, it's available, yes. And there's a summary in English, but the book hasn't been translated in English yet.
Okay, it hasn't been translated yet, but for Dutch viewers, it's called Aandachtige betrokkenheid als pedagogische grondhouding, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And Nynke, you are here from the region. You're a Frisian artist. You mainly used to sing in your mother tongue Frisian, by now also in English. And during COVID, you had a bit of a novelty, I think, with what you called a slow release of your last album.
Yeah.
So what was that about?
Well, the album was ready in 2020, but we couldn't go on tour because of COVID. And then we actually had to fill a gap of 1 year to the moment we could go on tour. And we had 11 songs on the album with one extra, so 12 songs, 12 months in a year. So we thought, hey, let's make it a slow album release. And we released every month one song together with a podcast in which I interviewed people that inspire me a lot on the topic where Plant is about.
So I think you also brought one of the songs with you today.
Maybe I first have to tell something more about Plant. The album is called Plant. And it's actually an album on which I reflect in songs and in spoken word on our Western worldview, actually. A worldview which puts mankind on top of the pyramid of life and which firmly believes in eternal economic growth and so on. And I'm fascinated by this worldview, actually, since I lived for a while in Mongolia with a nomadic family who showed me a totally different worldview, a view that is based on a sense of dependence, that everything's connected and that mountains, rivers, animals, humans all are connected and have this certain dependency of one another. And actually, since then, that's the main topic of my work. And Plant is even more outspoken than my previous albums because, the urgency to rethink this worldview and these beliefs is growing day by day.
Yeah, and you do so very beautifully. I think we can speak about it a little later, but maybe to our viewers so they know what we're talking about. You brought one song, Your Ancestor. Do you first want to tell a little bit about it, or should we just watch it and then reflect afterwards?
I can say one thing. Imagine we could say something to our great-grandchildren, so to the people who live 300 years from now. What would we say?
Wow, what would we say? Let's see.
Hello there, this is your ancestor speaking, your predecessor from the 21st century. When you emerged repressing me, remember? There was us, the Homo economicus. Don't walk away, please stay, please listen to what I have to say. I know I'm out of favor, out of date. You hate me probably, and it's too late to change my fate. But please, 2 minutes for your ancestor, the one that went before you. I assure you that when you let me explain a little more of what we went through, what we really meant to do, that the intention wasn't evil on our side, it might shed a different light on how you think of us, your ancestors, so you may learn from us, because to not get lost in the future, you must know your past, right? So here I am. This is your ancestor speaking, your predecessor from the 21st century. You're blaming me for spreading myself endlessly round the globe, exploiting nature, leaving no hope for a future, driving the earth to the verge of exhaustion, draining her to the bone like a virus, in fact. Doing what it loves the most, to multiply and multiply, completely undermining its host. And you're right, in a way. Looking back, I admit that we did, but we weren't aware, thought we were doing good. Economic growth for all of you. Comfort and convenience, life is so much easier than it has ever been before. You have to give me that. Of course, I do regret that we've polluted ourselves out of existence, created an unbridgeable distance from all other forms of life until life finally left us. Exit Homo economicus. You say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you cannot really see. You say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you cannot really see. The point I'm trying to make, we weren't fully awake. We didn't know the things you know. It seemed good to stick with growth. Climate change, we heard the words, but the words just didn't hurt. And it may sound absurd to you, but we loved our children too. We were stuck in a system of business, that's how we survived. It gave us our lives. To buy or not to buy was to be or not to be. Buying things determined our identity. And you can laugh about it now, but remember it was how we managed to get out of poverty and wilderness. Don't call it pure silliness. So we aren't flawless, your great-grandparents, but you shouldn't lay it all on us, the Homo economicus. You say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you cannot really see. You say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you cannot really see. So here I am. This is your ancestor speaking, your predecessor from the 21st century, to ask for forgiveness and for some understanding. Please don't be too demanding, don't be too hard on us. We did the best we could, moving forward like we thought we should. And though we were just a phase in the existence of the human race, we paved the road for you in many ways. This is your ancestor speaking, the relatives you know so well. Forgive us, I beg you, for sending you to hell. You say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you cannot really see. You say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you cannot really see. You say growth was my holy grail. Yes, it was, and it failed. It couldn't last, I do agree. But in the middle of the hustle, you cannot really see.
That's a song. I've watched it, of course, a couple of times by now, but it still gets you thinking. Lisette, you first heard this song when we're actually discussing your contribution to this program, and there were immediately some things that you pointed out. So would you maybe?
Yeah, well, I can't judge for other viewers, of course, but for me it's a really impressive song because it touches the soul, you could say, and the only way you can touch one's soul if you combine certain things. So there's love, there's compassion, there's a certain silence even in the song, but it's also confronting you. And because of the fact that those things are there together, makes it touch your soul, I should say. And that's what you need to be able to talk to one another, to really have a true encounter. It's only there when you are able to touch each other's souls. So I think it's a really beautiful song, but maybe for some young people it's a little heavy. I showed it to my daughter and she said it was too confronting maybe, but she also listened. So that's exactly the mixture you would like, I would say.
And is that what you were going for with this song? Was that your intention, or?
Your Ancestor is actually one of those songs that wrote itself. That's always a nice thing as an artist, that your pen just goes and you think, okay, let's see where we end up. But I really just followed the sound of the words that came and the rhyme, and only afterwards saw the meaning of it. There's one example of a sentence in the beginning where I say, to not get lost in the future, you must know your past, right? I only followed this "ast" sound, and then afterwards saw, hey, it's actually a good sentence and it says something. But so it wrote itself. And the feeling I had writing it was actually a cynical tone, because it's one big excuse, from the Homo economicus saying like, oh, sorry, we just didn't know, we did our best, but sorry, we sent you into hell and we ask forgiveness. And I was like, yeah, right, we didn't know, we do know. We are aware of what we're doing, we're only not capable of reacting adequately. So this feeling was that I had with it was cynical, but then the moment came that I had to perform it for the first time for the recording of the video, and then I thought, well, no, I have to do this completely honest, as an honest excuse. There cannot be any cynical feeling in it there. And then the first reactions came, and one of the reactions was beautiful, compassion with the Homo economicus. I was like, what? Compassion. But I think that's actually the best thing of this song, that it has, it gives room to both interpretations. And actually, I think, the compassion and the true forgiveness is probably the most interesting option. But that is something the song taught me, that's not what I put into it consciously.
No, but maybe it was your soul speaking as well.
Maybe,
that's what art's about.
Yeah. It just came from somewhere and I followed it. So that's my feeling with the song.
And do you, because for your work, for your PhD research, you talked to various students and pupils in schools. You spent multiple days at different schools here in the Netherlands. This twofold of this forgiveness and this cynical side. Have you encountered that as well? Is that something?
No, not the cynical side, but I think it's important that there's room for hope, and forgiveness is a new place, makes a new place possible, an empty space where nobody's been before because it's forgiven. And sometimes you have to slightly confront children, but in a gentle way with things. So it's a bit of both. What I heard from the pupils mostly is that they need love as well as limits. So they ask for limits. They ask to get some kind of confrontation sometimes, because if everything is possible, then you don't become human, you could say. And we always live together with other humans, so that's a very important message to take along, I think.
How do you this not everything is possible? Of course, they say if anywhere anything is possible, it's in art. How do you see that when writing your stories, especially because you want to give this message with your music?
Yeah, well, in writing and art, limits are important also.
Oh.
You need limits. That gives a lot of creativity, actually.
Yeah.
And also one thing that I learned from Plants, while making the live show, was that it came to us making the show, like what is actually the essence we want to communicate. And that's also something I think we probably need as a society in education also, is the importance of not knowing. Yeah. We decided, we wrote these 11 songs, but we end this live show with an improvised piece. Just then at that moment I let go of language, I let go of melody, I let go of sense of time, because we don't know how long it's going to take. And there's only the moment and the openness of your senses and the audience and what happens then. And I saw a parallel, with a creative process, because in the situation in which we are now as a society, we're faced with so many big, complex issues, and isn't it quite normal actually then to at first say, okay, now we don't know, actually, we immediately always want solutions, but isn't it the first stage to say we don't know? Because every creative process starts with not knowing, a blank page, staring at you, making you feel uncomfortable, and creating a feeling of a certain resistance. Yeah. But as an artist, you know that you have to embrace that not knowing, go into that resistance to end up in a place you've never been before. And that's the challenge for us. We, in a certain way, we have to reinvent ourselves. We have to reinvent our worldview, I started talking about. And so we have to embrace that resistance.
Well, maybe it's the same in education. If you want to have a true encounter, you have to be able not to know what the child's going to be like, not to know where you're going to go together, not to know what's going to come out of the conversation. Yeah. And it seems like we almost have forgotten to do that, to remain in silence, or not in silence, but in a circumstance where you don't know what the next step will be.
And not knowing now maybe always is a failure. If you say, I don't know, it feels like that's a failure.
It's not, because only the new can only come out of not knowing. And so in my thesis, it's really an important part that I'm talking about. But always within, in Dutch we call it geborgenheid, within a kind of love and safety and within limits, but within that space you have to be able not to know, to have a space where you can just be with the other, or be with your artistic, your process, or whatever you're doing, instead of running on empty, I would say. Keep on running.
If we keep actually holding on to the certainties, the things we know, then isn't it actually that we are repeating? Yeah,
you can't invent anything new, and you can't find a solution the way you did it before, because if else we would have found a solution. Yeah. And that's, I think, the challenge for now. Yeah. So we can all learn a lot from artists, I think.
Yeah, maybe we could help.
Yeah. Your help is I think also much needed, and I fully agree that I think we could learn a lot. But maybe to come back to you, Lisette, of course we have here educators from all levels, from primary school, secondary school, up until university. And is this, as far as I know, you also were at all these levels for your research?
Yeah. No, not at university.
Not at
no,
university,
no, no.
only secondary and primary education.
Yeah.
Is there a difference in how this space is being used? Is this space required in all stages of development, or?
Yeah, I would say so, yeah. And within the system, we function within a system. The magic is that you see teachers who are able to make that space, and teachers who say it's very difficult to make that space. And so it's interesting to learn from the teachers who are able to do it within the system, how they do it, and how they are always able every day to have a true encounter with the pupils. And I've got critics that say, that's not possible, too many classes, too many pupils. Some teachers are able to, apparently. So that's interesting, I think.
Yeah, I was thinking of something. I think maybe we also should leave the judgment out of that. That you know, some people manage to do it, and some people take more.
It's not a judgment. It is. Some people are asking for help. They say, "I want to, but I don't know how yet." Yeah. So it's not a matter of good or bad, but it's more like, what does it take, and what does it require from you as a person, from the system, from the school, from the managers, to create this space to just be with one another.
Maybe you say we as artists want to help, and I think you as artists are also, so to say, experts on creating this connection. But what if a teacher comes to Lisette and says, I really want to create this space and want to make this safety of not knowing, but I don't know how. And then Lisette says, I know someone who's an expert on that. What would you do?
Well, what I can only say what I learned from the process of plans and is actually to question my certainties all the time, to question my assumptions and my habits, my patterns of thinking. And that truly changes a lot. And of course, you can always say, well, that's only for you as an individual. What does that help? But I think that only can be the first step, and it's actually a big step, because it's in fact about reinventing ourselves. You know, it's we point at the systems. We tend to point at the systems all the time, like it's too big for me as an individual. It's the government, or it's the multinationals, but in the end, the systems, that's us. Because we invented the systems. The systems are there because we think in a certain way. So yeah, if we could invent the systems, what we did, then we could reinvent them also, and starting with reinventing ourselves. So for me, it helps just to question everything. For instance, we went to live in a zero waste way that started with questioning everything, you know, from little things. What do I put in my mouth? What do I eat? What do I buy? How do I live? And if you can be honest in asking those questions and not judge it, like how bad it is, or because that doesn't help. Then give yourself some time, because some people are very quick and very radical, and others need a lot of time, and that's okay. But we need everyone to make those steps in that direction.
Yeah, I also would say that next to that, you could try to have encounters with people in other worlds. We easily judge the money-making profit business, and we judge almost everything that's not us. And I think there's a possibility in trying to have a real encounter with someone in the other world, not judging he or she, not judging you and otherwise. And to be able to do that, you just have to be with someone and feel what happens to you when you're there. And it feels uncomfortable because someone is really different, and you think, yeah, but he's not. That's not the way it has to be. And staying in that position, being uncomfortable, not judging, and trying to feel what happens then. That's what my suggestion would be. Try an encounter with someone not in your own world, but in another world.
and you both of you, I've heard it coming up multiple times now, is this feeling of discomfort. Is that it? You say this space is necessary for this discomfort for students to be okay with this discomfort?
Yeah, because if you are in a position of discomfort, of not knowing, it asks you to go inside and to talk to your own inside and to feel what's going on, and then you can make a next step. But usually we forget this step. We go on to the next and to the next and to the next, and we talk about stuff, but we hardly meet. We repeat our own stories mostly. So that's what it's good for. It's good for all kinds of things, but that's among other things, yeah.
And in the educational context, so especially surrounding issues like climate change, like the big challenges that we face, you create in a classroom, you create this safe space, and students are a little uncomfortable about their own impact on the planet. How do you go from there to then get them to change, also get them to act? Because that is one of the themes we've had today.
But it's not only in classrooms. It takes a while. You have to be patient. So it can be outside the classroom. It takes time. It's not like, oh, we do that in a session in 1 hour classroom and then everything is fixed. And the problem is you don't know. So it's not instrumental. You never know what's going to come out. The only thing you know that if there's love there, if there are limits there, if there is time and space, and if it's all together, there's a possibility you might have a true encounter, and you might make the other one feel that he's part of the world we're all on. And that's something you hope, that someone takes responsibility, not only for him or herself, but also for the others and for the world. And you never know. That's exactly the problem. You don't know. You can only trust on going it the right way. You have to have some deep kind of trust that if you're just with the other, with nature, then maybe something will come out. But if it doesn't, it should be okay as well.
Yeah.
Because if else, it's instrumental.
Yeah.
Should build this kind of confidence, and as an artist, you learn to trust on that, because you always have to go into that process, and every time again, it's uncomfortable. That doesn't change. It's always but you learn to trust on that. There always comes out something. And always something you didn't expect.
So it has to be accompanied with hope. And with some kind of happiness even. If you don't trust the future, if you don't trust the young people now to be able to find solutions for the future, then maybe it's lost already. So that's also important, that there's some kind of hope and knowing that even while you don't know, knowing that you'll get somewhere together.
And you don't have to do it alone. When you can connect on this level with more people, with a group, or with even a society, something has to come out, because we are creative creatures, So, and then
and that's where the magic happens. That's really where the magic happens. Your magic. You never know what's going to come out of a song, do you?
No.
How often doesn't there come anything out? How often do you think this is not working out and you just abandon it?
It's not working when I try too hard. When I try, actually with already a goal, like I want to catch this in words, this idea I want to put in words, and it's never working, or it's not good. It's too artificial or te bedacht.
In education, we call that a kind of active waiting. So you have to be alive, and you have to be ready to receive whatever you have to receive, but you don't know if it's coming and when it's coming, and that's what makes it difficult.
We should train ourselves in uncertainty, to be able to to be comfortable with uncertainty. So
Yeah.
maybe Corona is also a good exercise.
And yeah.
We don't know how long that's going to take, and but something will come out. We can be confident.
Then maybe to circle back right to the beginning, which we missed earlier. You mentioned the line in your song, to not get lost in the future, you need to know your
You must
past.
know your past. Yeah.
You must know your past. I want to hear from Lisette, from in this educational context.
Yeah.
How do you view that sentence, or that sentiment? Of course, that's also in this sentence.
Well, there are a lot of big educators have talked a lot about this. Do you have to know someone's past in order to be able to go to the future? I would say yes and no. So yes, because it gives you some surroundings and some, you get a chance to know someone else a little bit better, a child, his environment. But no, because if you say, oh, well, he comes from a difficult environment, his father has this, they don't have money, whatever, then you already created a person, and you don't give the person himself a chance to become whoever he wants to become. So it's mixed, I would say. And on one hand, you should take it along also, because the old, you can learn from the old. We all have to learn from the old. You have to give them values. You have to give things. We're grown-ups. We've been through some processes. It always helps to give that to the next generation. On the other hand, you shouldn't burden them too much with our stories and with our despair and with our problems, because then there's no new space left anymore. So it's always a balance, and that's the problem with education. It's all about balance, all kinds of balances. So I would say it's a balance.
Nice. And then maybe a hard question for both of you, because it is so much of a balance, and it's really difficult to really pinpoint it, and it's about not knowing. But we of course have a lot of educators also with us today. What are like small things you can, not only educators but all of us in our day-to-day life, how can we, just on a very small scale, what are small things we can do?
Well, you can have an intention to start with. You can start your day with an intention. You can have the intention to have an encounter. You can have the intention to be friendly. You can have the intention to do something sustainable, not buying a plastic basket. I would say keep it small, because if it's too big, you won't manage. You could say to yourself, when I'm in class, there's one pupil I really want to try to have an encounter with today among the 200 others that I'm going to see. So I think you can do a lot, starting with yourself and getting back to that intention every time again, because we all have the good intention, I think. There's every educator wants to have encounters with his pupil, but it's all kind of circumstances that make that difficult. But you can try again every day, just a new try, again and again and again.
Yeah, I would say the same, like keep it small, and try to, what I mean with questioning all your assumptions and habits. To what I learned is, a lot of things you just do on the automatic pilot, without thinking, or just because everyone does it, or because you were taught to do so. But you can ask yourself the question, like, is it also according to my values? Do I really think I should do it like this, or is there maybe another way? And that is really refreshing to do it, and don't put too much pressure on it. But it immediately changes something in the way you look at things.
Yeah, that's one more. You can talk about it to each other. That's what we forget. You can talk, just sharing how difficult it is, or what's on your mind, what's really on your mind, not what you have to do, but what keeps you busy at night. That's one thing that helps for sure. Ask other people to reflect on you. What do you think? What can I change? What can you learn from me? All those kind of questions.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I would love to continue this conversation still, but also, of course, we have an audience, and I can imagine that they are really interested and might have some questions. Yeah, what I see, one of the first questions I see here is really interesting. I think that's mainly directed to you about your song, but how much forgiveness do we extend to our ancestors? How much can we expect from future generations? Because you ask for this in your song, but do you think is it a fair thing to ask? Because of course your first intention, you said, that's how I interpret the question a little bit.
Is it a fair thing to ask forgiveness from future generations? Yeah, it's a very double thing. On the one hand, when I wrote it, I thought, no, because we know what we're doing. So it's a little weak to just ask for forgiveness. And still we are continuing all those, the things we do. But on the other hand, later I thought, yeah, well, maybe this is who we are now also, you know, maybe there's something, it's very difficult in how we are programmed or how we to change so rapidly something like a worldview or a culture, and maybe a little forgiveness is in place.
And
I don't know.
Making mistakes is what makes us human, I guess.
Yeah.
So if we want to get rid of the mistakes, we also lose a part of our humanity. And even though I also see that it's disastrous where we're going, I think it starts maybe with forgiving. Because only if you forgive, you can try to build a future. If else you stay focused on old feelings, on pain, on I don't know the words in English, so I have it here. Revenge.
Revenge. Yeah. No, that is very true. Thank you. We have a couple more minutes, so let me quickly scroll through. The Slido is still open, so if some of you have some burning questions, please put them in the Slido. I think Thomas can put the link also in the chat for us another time. But this one is, I think, really also fitting for today. But the question is how to overcome repeating ourselves, even in breakout sessions, in settings like this. And how can we stop repeating what we know and really come to this connection also in an online setting? Because after this, you're of course going to discuss in breakout rooms. You joined one earlier. How can we apply this?
Well, I would say don't ask the questions or don't tell the stories you have already told, but try if you can connect on another level, maybe what a person does in his free time, or maybe some questions about what makes your life worthy, or what keeps you awake at night, or and that are scary questions, because they come close, they come to your heart. But sometimes you manage to find a way, and often you don't. So it's not a matter of trying really hard with the best questions, and you will. It's more like hoping it can happen, and hearing yourself speak when you're doing the same thing you did before. So then you can remain silent for a minute or half a minute and see what happens. You're laughing.
Recognition. Sometimes hear myself telling the story again and again also, and time to reinvent it.
Oh, this is also a nice one. How do we go beyond saying there were good intentions and go on to actually making amends?
Making
amends.
Well, maybe you want to go first. I can say something.
Making amends, wil je dat even vertalen?
Niet dat we niet alleen sorry zeggen, maar het ook goed maken. Dat we ook.
For me, I think the only thing I can come up with now is that the first step is to admit that we don't know at this point, and not immediately jump to solutions. We always have solutions here and solutions there, and it's that is repeating yourself. Someone told me about the theory U. You have this U form, and we always want to jump from that point immediately to the other point, and then we got it, solved, fixed. But that's the creative process again. You have to go down first. You have to go down, and it's uncomfortable, and it's painful, and then you come.
It's not just painful. It can also be tremendously fun.
Yeah, maybe too. Maybe I forget that now for a minute. But then, when you're down, it can be silent for a while. That you just really don't know which direction, and you don't know how long it's going to take. But then, when you go up again, you really are at another point. It's not just repeating yourself. And I think how bad is it just to say now that that we really don't know now?
I would say enjoy the process and be a daredevil. I would say be a daredevil. Try to be someone who doesn't color within the lines, but tries to step out. So it can also be fun because your creative process is also fun.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's also with jumping over. I noticed that a lot of times then we're talking about technological solutions, solutions outside of ourselves.
Yeah.
But and maybe that's because it's difficult to go really inside. But as you say, it can be fun because it's going to give you something that surprises you.
Yeah.